Greetings, Year 12. Right, we're going to have a look at two really important aspects of creating your website. And that second page article, people tend to suck at having the second page and it being an article that feeds off their homepage. So we're going to have a look at that. And we're also going to have a look at iconic photography, because not only does that play through in your homepage, but it will define the look of your second page article, that sort of package we're putting together. So let's have a look at what's going on really on a conventions level, but also on a kind of meaning level out in the real world. So we're going to start with our homepage, because we need to think about how this directs the audience towards what's going on the main sort of article. Now, what's important here is the play between the headline and the type of image that you have. And the way that I discuss these for current affairs magazines is that they are iconic images, but there's a few different ways you can construct an iconic image. And I think that if we have a look here on, say, the top left, that is what I would say is a truly iconic image. It's a drawn image, or something that's been carefully constructed for symbolisms within the meaning of it. So the danger of the Facebook boycotts, and then we have this large Facebook F with this tiny black figure seemingly cowering sort of underneath it, and you can see it's got that slight reflection on the floor, as though this is actually like a building in which one might live. Okay, so it might indicate the dominance of Facebook and maybe or the loneliness of the person there at the bottom in the middle. I'm not quite sure how it works with the danger of the Facebook boycotts in terms of the idea of danger, but certainly the size and scale of Facebook over people's lives might be being indicated here. So we've got some kind of play about, if there is a danger to Facebook, then what would it mean for the individual? All right. The next one that you have is what a leaked NHS memo tells us about white fragility. All right. And then you've got your nice shallow depth of field close up on a sign that someone's been holding up at a Black Lives Matter protest. White silence is violence, held up by a white hand at a busy gathering, right? So even though we've got the shallow depth of field there, we definitely have a fulsome crowd behind it. Now, with that headline there, what a leaked NHS memo tells us about white fragility is certainly raising an enigma about the role of white people in the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, it's unclear as to what it is exactly, but certainly there are these connotations of sort of white participation in it, in the movement, and even with the sort of white faces and white blurred hands you can see in the background, it really is about how whiteness is dealing with Black Lives Matters. And obviously with the NHS being a British organisation, and most of the people in the country proportionally are white, and it's about how British white mainstream culture, if you will, that kind of ethnocentric culture of the country is dealing with it. But it raises the question and positions the audience to want to go and read on. Now, so you've got the iconic kind of drawn thing on the top left, you've got the iconic symbolic real world shot, and you can imagine a photojournalist taking that, and you've also got the imperialism is far from over. I'm going to find that and put that up on the screen now so we can see that. And again, bit like the white silence is violence image there, it's a beautifully composed shot. It has its symmetries, it has its sense of depth to it, but as you'll see there with the imperialism is far from over, you've got these African women who are nicely sort of walking from left to right. There's a nice composition there, but they're actually holding up a Chinese flag, and you can't really see that on the thumbnail at first blush, but what flag are they holding up? There's the enigma. As it turns out, when you look at the story, that you have a situation where sort of British imperialism is kind of being replaced by Chinese imperialism, with the sort of massive sort of building projects they have in Africa that are sort of help funded by the Chinese government. One final thing that I'll draw your attention to on this page is the use of those contributor photos on the right hand side. Now, they're not photos as such in the Spectator. They have this kind of conceit where they use like a lot of hand drawn imagery and sort of caricature of people. But likewise, if you need to have original images for yours, then it might be a really good look to have some photos of other contributors that are youth contributors that the audience can sort of identify with as peers and respected peers who are offering information on stories that they're going to go and value and use in their lives. So we've got a range of photography here that you're either going to construct pretty heavily through for something like Photoshop with the Facebook one, have a well composed shot that you're going to want to go and get in camera for, say, the shot for White Silence is Violence, or we can go and get some studio shots for our contributors, and I think that's something we could quite easily do if we needed to. So once people click through, they get to the article, and the article always leads with this iconic image, right? That's pretty much always the same image that they have in the thumbnail image on the homepage, and that will be working off the same headline. And so far, essentially, what we've said from the homepage is that there is that play between the bold headline and the leading iconic image that creates some kind of enigma or promise of information. You have those. They'll very often have a topic header for which area of information and news analysis they're offering. Can be anything from international, national, different areas and regions and continents in the world, books and arts, all those kind of sort of topic areas. They tend to have those sitting around there somewhere. They tend to have a two-line stand first that in some way sort of sums up where the information's going, a byline where then we'll have the name of the contributor, and you might have a contributor image, again being very similar to those kind of portraity ones that we've seen on the homepage. Your article will need to be 500 words, but very often they're much longer in the sort of real explainers that they have in current affairs magazines. But don't worry, 500, some of them are short, some of them are far longer. Your 500 words will be fine. And then they normally have one other image or audio or visual thing in there. Now, I've seen a range of things that they have in these second article layouts. They very often have another image that might be some kind of historical image or something that gives some further insight that is sort of discussed in the main body text. And then I've also seen it where they have like visual or audio visual explainers of something. So you have your iconic still image at the top, and then there's a short moving image package. Sometimes they're 5-10 minutes. Your thing really only wants to be 2 minutes or aiming for that. And so there's going to be something where the audience are really getting this great weight of information. And something you also need to, of course, to have is your socials. All right, so your Facebook links, your Twitter links, Instagram, whatever it may be, that are going to be reaching your youth audience, so that someone who is educated can go and read an article and go think, that's a really good article and very informative. I think I will share this with my peer group, so they put me in greater esteem within my social group, and they rate me for how I think about the world. And that's kind of one of the things that we do. Now, let's have a look here. Here's The Economist. What's interesting here is the play between the image and the headline. Why the French Riviera is full of ghost yachts. Okay, and the image play is really interesting. Okay, so what you've got here, you've got these women walking to the right hand side with a clear entrance sign pointing the other way. So they're in some way exiting as they're looking across at all of these super yachts in the distance. Now there's some lovely sense of sort of symmetry. It feels like there's a nice symmetry between the women on the left and the yachts and the entrance on the right, pointing the other way, with those three bollards there. There's a nice sense of rule of thirds there, with the ground sort of sloping away up to the third, or the bottommost third of the image. And there's also that kind of sense of the vertical thirds in play, with the bollards, and also the top of the horizontal thirds, working with a line of the windows of the yachts and the sort of the iconic French Riviera buildings in the distance. And it really positions the audience to understand the sort of emptiness and the lack of use. It's not like these people are walking towards the entrance. If these two women were walking towards the entrance, then that might indicate use, but this indicates a lack of use and emptiness within the frame. All right, so it's worth really having a think about what am I going to get in the frame for my own images, and what kind of headline could I put against that. So we've got our iconic image, it's playing off of our headline. We've got our one line. Here we've got a one line stand first there, and then you go down to the drop capital, the body text underneath explaining what's going on. You've got your section header there for Europe with a little pinstripe above it, and the date line I think there is with it as well. The socials are on the left hand side too, and these are the things that are like pretty much always going to go and be there, right? And you are going to want to have these things on yours. It's a fairly simple layout thing to do on your second page, but what was really important is the choice of a good image. Like seriously, especially for the current affairs magazines, the choice of a good image that is evocative and working with your main headline is really, really important, because it's going to carry that whole second page. Here's another one, also from The Economist, because The Economist is very good at it, but I'll get advice on in a minute. Again, now this is one of those drawn ones, okay, and actually you can see from the bottom right hand corner of that image of the two people cheering each other in this very distant sort of tower block look, is that you've got a an artist's credit in the bottom right hand corner. I would not underestimate the artistic value of some of these images. Like, certainly, a good bit of photojournalism, you will happily see some of the most powerful images that humankind has ever made by having a single frame capturing something. But again, with this one here, you can see how this one is sort of made out of bits. You could see how you might get that window that they've made there, and you've got the sort of distant version of the same thing, and they're all cheersing with these sort of little martini glasses. Very simple colour palette, sort of grey and black and yellow, and with a little little sort of red cherry in the martini glass. And it's sort of symbolic of the distance, the social distance of socializing or trying to socialize in the coronavirus outbreak. And obviously that works against the headline, the rules of corona speak, and it's giving some kind of explainer about how people are dealing with that in the article. All right, so there's that play between the headline and that iconic image, and that iconic image would not be horrendously difficult to make in Photoshop out of bits. One of the things I'm going to get you guys to do is consider either drawing stuff and colouring it in first of all, or getting different icons and different silhouettes from around the internet and compositing a new image. When people make artwork, they get bits of other stuff that's online and they repurpose it, right? No one's asking you to be a great artist. This is not an art contest, as best as we can make it. Even with your planning, and if there's more planning in the future, we will do as much as we can to make sure this is not an art contest. Now, these kind of shots are eminently doable as well, where you've got some kind of essentially faked up symbolism within the shot. I grabbed this from The Guardian. The Guardian is a newspaper, but do you know what, they do really good iconic photography against their headlines. Have differing approaches to social distancing rules caused issues in your family, right? And then you've got this lovely composed shot of the sort of symmetrical yellow line of tape across. Clearly someone has got a nice shallow depth of field shot and really focused in with the right kind of lens on the please keep a safe distance of 2 meters, and someone laying down one piece of tape within the frame. Now that is obviously symbolic of the importance of a safe distance of 2 meters, and that kind of links to the ideas of different approaches. So that sort of thing you can do, where you sort of deliberately put something in frame and fake up your photos. Whereas we've seen shots previously, like the women walking past the yacht, or the white silences violence image from earlier on, they have been taken by essentially documentary photographers, where they've thought that something was sort of important and happening naturally within the world. But you can fake photos up, and one of the things I'm going to say to you guys is, get ready to fake some photos up that are meaningful about stories, and that's absolutely fine. There's a whole industry about that. Right, now here is the sort of thing that I think is kind of eminently doable. Right, this is taken from The Guardian. The Guardian is not and should not be referred to as a current affairs magazine, although it does have lots of analysis. But they do really good iconic images, and I see these kind of images in The Economist, and I've seen them in the New Scientist, which are publications I read a lot more as well. They do this thing where they go and get composited images. They get two different images and they make something meaningful by putting them in contrast through colour and shape. And the shape itself is meaningful. Like, this is a beautifully composed image. So if the headline is "Water firms dumped raw sewage into England's rivers 200,000 times in 2019, stand first, untreated effluent flowed into waterways for more than 1.5 million hours, data shows." That is a huge amount of pollution going into a whole country's rivers. Look at the construction of this image. Let's start with the blue. You have an aerial shot of a winding, snaking, pretty wide river, okay? And that's being cut into, that blue of that is being cut into this kind of rusty orange of these silos up at the top right hand corner, almost with like a pipe look. It's not just a rectangle, it's a pipe sort of coming across and then down, with these three flowing water streams, yeah, that kind of indicate flow out of the pipe. And now they're in colour contrast, but they also give the idea that you've got this sort of natural waterway versus this unnatural human industry, one flowing into the other. And they are, you know, a large set of silos with a large river, and it really does indicate the scale of the problem. All right, so it, you know, what is the meaning? It is to indicate the scale of the pollution, and that works with the headline. Now, I think I could get you to do very similar images yourself and compose these, and you can certainly get your own images to put these together, and then we can think about how we can sort of cross-cut them in some way. Okay, so I've taken this from Vice and their homepage, but I think it's important to have a look at some of the choices and sort of the range of choices that you can make, especially with media aimed at a youth audience. I would argue that the production values are like a bit lower. Certainly, with the top story there, 17 developers are testing coronavirus vaccines on humans. Here's what you need to know about them. Random brought in agency shot of a scientist with a bottle taking a syringe worth out. And what happens there is that makes that a really good shot, because the focus is really set very finely on the syringe and the bottle with the sort of intense looking scientist behind them, and that really indicates the shall we say the precision, yeah, the scientific precision of this scientific work, and you know, the development on the idea of development of the vaccine, right? So that kind of works to anchor visually the headline. Then you've also got that kind of more observational shot, you know, celebrating July 4th like this isn't a pandemic, will cost lives. And then there's this wide shot of all these people at the beach seemingly not social distancing. So it's more of an observational kind of shot, but it's about the amount of people within the frame and, you know, in this kind of fun seaside environment. And so suddenly we have these connotations of fun and lack of distancing, and that then works against that whole sort of 4th of July celebratory thing that they shouldn't be doing. So it puts it in conflict with that. Interestingly, we have this horrendous piece of grammar. A white couple was arrested after pointing a gun at a black family in a Chipotle parking lot. Right, and they've got this, what seems to be a portrait video phone image, that because of its low quality indicates that this was sort of citizen journalism and someone's found this. And because she's got this distant look in the top of the frame, and the camera's sort of having the gun pointed at it, it really raises a question to the audience, like, what happened? A white couple were arrested is a very important thing. And also they have, I mean, that in terms of grammar, I mean, that's a terrible grammar. So you might find, although I did say to you guys that with a youth audience they might have a lot more use of acronyms and stuff like that, and that sort of, not text speak, but certainly those shortening of terms that one might find on the on social media these days, then that's fine. But that was terrible grammar. Anyway, interestingly, on the Vice page, they put nearly every word in capitals within the headline, which isn't particularly good grammar, but it does create a sense of drama. They put it, bold black and terrible grammar, but it creates more impact, right? So it's sort of almost tabloid in its approach. But we've got three kinds of image there. We've got a very constructed image with a very shallow depth of field at the top. We've got a more observational image of public life. And then we've got something where we essentially, with you guys, you might want to fake the drama of something up and have that in your in one of your news stories, again against your second page article, leading the audience to with an enigma, so they'll go and click through. Right, so that's how it works in terms of the importance of the conventions of the second page article. And we've talked a lot today about iconic photography. That's going to be the difference between you being really high up the mark scheme and middling. All right, the quality of the photography has got to be good. This isn't just you shooting your mates looking a bit badass on a corner with some with a lovely branded hoodie on. There's got to be meaning. There's got to be a level of seriousness or drama that's going to go on with your shots.